everybody. Welcome to a joint venture. This is a Toy Guys Talking as well as a podcast for Nerds on Earth featuring my guest slash I'm a guest.
Right. Yeah, I'm Clave. Again, I'm with the website nerdsonearth.com, and Michael and I became acquainted. Social media, source of all good things.
It gets so much flack because there are some negative things to social media, but there are so many positives too.
Absolutely, yeah.
And social media, I think, is a total microcosm. Maybe it's too big to be a microcosm anymore. But I've met some of my best friends that I've ever known in my entire life through social media. So I think I often say we need to come up with a new term because the old one is spoiled. So yeah. there needs to be some new name for social media because it has such a stigma to it. If you do the work, if you look, just like toy hunting, if you hunt long enough, you'll find that treasure. Same goes for social media. And, you know, I just say hunt, look, keep looking. If you find something with some schmutz on it, just pass it over. Don't dwell on it all day. Some people buy that toy with schmutz on it and they follow it, walk around with it, and they're like, oh, it's ruined. It's ruined. It's ruined. Don't do that. Block, delete, move on. Keep looking for the good people.
Yeah, the mute button's your friend. But find the good. And actually, that's how Nerds on Earth got its start. Is we're just a collection of buddies, a bunch of nerds, and we would email back and forth. It started our list of our top 7 favorite X-Men. And so we would make like our dream list of X-Men, right? And I had done a website before, a baseball website that I had sold. But I had these buddies all across the country. It's like, gosh, let's keep in touch. And so we created Nerds on Earth. Essentially, it's just a big scheme for us to keep in touch and stay in one another's lives. And we've added nerds on top of our original three or four core guys. And yeah.
Do you have a chain of command like G.I. Joe? Do you ever go, I'm in charge here, next comes you?
I'm top, I'm first sergeant.
Do you ever pull the Flint D-bag routine from Arise Serpentor? I love Flint, but I always hated how he dressed down Beachhead when he was illustrating the chain of command in that Arise Serpentor Arise episode 1.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand that.
Oh, you know, it's interesting when you're a kid and you're watching these shows, the things that bug you. And my character was Leatherneck. I never liked Leatherneck because I read the comic, and I don't know how familiar you are with the comic, but
Fairly.
There was this great storyline in the comic where a group of the Joes were captured behind enemy lines, and Stalker ordered Outback to escape. He's like, unless somebody...
I just read that one a few months ago. Yeah.
So he's like, unless someone escapes, we're up the creek. And so Outback escaped, and Leatherneck just lit into him about leaving his buddies behind, and Outback just kind of took that. But to this day, I hold a grudge against an imaginary character from a comic book from decades ago because I'm like, why are you being mean to Outback?
And that would bug me too, except I can't hold anything against any Gyrene. I mean, that is the get out of jail free card for whatever behavior. So Flint, warrant officer, I'm like, I love Flint, but don't talk down to Beachhead, you know?
That's right.
But it doesn't matter what Leatherneck, Gung Ho, the Sergeant Slaughter, even the guys I didn't know were Marines. I believe Mainframe is a Marine. And I just recently found out Bullhorn is a Marine. I'm like, oh man.
Really?
Those are the best, man. So Marines can do whatever they want.
Bullhorn was
books.
a little bit past my heyday. So
yeah, that's one of those later figures that without a Sunbow cartoon supporting it, I don't think he was all that prominently featured in the comic either. Yeah. So I was going just solely based on accessories and look. So you know, I would pass by the G.I. Joe aisle at that point if I was even going to the toy stores anymore. But a few figures like Bullhorn grabbed my attention because he had the mask, he had the bullhorn, he had a megaphone.
Yeah.
And being a big wrestling fan, Jimmy the Mouth of the South Heart with his megaphone.
Yeah.
Hey baby, hey baby. I just imagine Bullhorn running around the pit going, hey baby, it's G.I. Joe time. And
there were some good later figures. Even though
Bullhorn, he also had the case that opened up with a sniper rifle that you could assemble.
Yeah.
So it was
awesome.
mind blowing. He was like 4 specialists in one. It was just
that was one of the best accessories. Was the rifle that you could put together, that you could assemble them and store in a case. So fun.
So you're saying top 7 X-Men? Do you remember what they are?
No.
Or have they changed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I grew up in the Claremont X-Men. I don't know, the 80s Chris Claremont. I worship those comics, and I read every one. And so I bought Uncanny X-Men, of course, and I bought Amazing Spider-Man, drugstore spinner rack, whatever, 40 cents. And then G.I. Joe, and then when Special Missions came out, I mean, I just devoured those comics. But Claremont X-Men were my team. So I'm sure whichever 7, it was a combination of like Claremont Australia years, or like a Rogue and Wolverine and Storm and Nightcrawler.
I first got into it. I've said before that I got into X-Men when all of my other favorite properties died. So when Transformers R.I.P., G.I. Joe R.I.P., just not even a comic going anymore, I needed something. And I started getting into X-Men because how could so many people be wrong? I mean, the thing was so super successful. And I got in right when the Jim Lee series started. So the one that was just called X-Men. But I bought back issues of the Claremont stuff too. And that's when I started to really, like, instantly get hooked on X-Men. So the Jim Lee team, they're my favorites. So Gambit, Wolverine, the Beast, Cyclops, anybody on that, because they split the teams up. They had like almost different brands or something.
What was it, blue and gold team or
something like that? And for some reason, I would always get the Jim Lee team. I don't know if there's like among X-Men fans a more proper name for that team when they split the teams up, but I always just called it the Jim Lee is the artist that drew that one, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I would always get that one. The day it would come out, I would go to the comic shop or grocery stores. It's crazy to think you used to be able to buy these comics at the grocery store. Yeah. Just like toys. Like some grocery stores had Transformers and G.I. Joe. But I wouldn't always get the one with Colossus and Nightcrawler and the other team. I don't know why that is. Maybe it just came down to issue 1, issue 2. I'm like, great, I've started with a new thing instead of like issue 327.
Exactly.
I felt like, oh my God, I don't know what's happened here, and I don't have the money and the resources to catch up on what's happening on this other property. Yeah,
Nightcrawler, I loved that character. So you mentioned him. I'm like, Nightcrawler. Yeah, exactly. All right, so a Nerds on Earth tradition is we ask folks their origin story. So speaking of you getting hooked on things, I got to hear your origin story. Specifically, like, how'd you get started with G.I. Joes? Like when you were a wee little
Highway Market,
Mr. Mercer.
I've mentioned Highway Market in my videos lovingly several times. Right here in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, we had so these giant Walmarts that are all over the place, the Supercenter Walmarts that have like not just a little bit of a grocery section, it's a full grocery store, plus a full clothing store, plus a full like
sporting goods,
everything. Get your hair cut, food, restaurant, electronics, and a toy store, a toy section. Well, decades before Walmart started churning these out all around the world, we had a store like that in Kitchener, and I took it for granted. I figured every city has this, right? Every city's like my city, and every city has something like this. I would learn years later that it was one of the biggest toy sections in North America, not just my town or my province. It was
really?
In the entire continent, apparently. It was one of the biggest toy sections. We're talking before Toys R Us started to roll out, and like, the giant monoliths of toy stores. So there was an escalator that ascended into the heavens.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's just,
That was an experience.
yeah, it was really, that's why I think I'm a lifelong toy fan, because of the presentation was so amazing. You could almost have Hallelujah playing as you're going up the escalator. And some pictures still exist of Highway Market on plaidstallions.com. So whenever I wanted to take a walk through my old Highway Market, because they demolished it and they put up a different grocery store there a long time ago. But there's still pictures on Plaid Stallions, all sorts of great retro pictures there. But when you got to the top of the escalator, you had your choice. So you could go left and everything new was there. And it was huge. It was like four times as big as a Walmart toy section is today. It was just enormous. Or you could go right, and that's where all of the old unsold toys are. And that section was just as big. So
seriously,
being, talking about origin story, this is why I'm a lifelong toy fan, because depending on my mood, I could go left and go check out Megatron and Soundwave and Hawk, or Hawk wasn't there just yet, Flint or Duke or Snake Eyes. If I went right, I could see all the stuff that came before me. So there was $6 Million Man. There was stuff I had never heard of. From the 70s, lots of 70s toys on clearance, and they just filled the whole section up with clearance toys. So I remember going through those aisles, just curiously learning about what is this stuff. No cartoon, no comic, no TV show, no nothing, no even new product coming out, dead lines. But even at that young an age, I remember thinking, like, these are beautiful relics. Like, that's it. That's the end of the road for this stuff. And I didn't buy any of it, but it was fascinating to me to see all these incredible, fun-looking toys that were just sitting there collecting dust for 4 years. So I think that store is the reason why I'm such a huge toy fan. And then in terms of why I got into G.I. Joe, my brother was a big military buff growing up. So he got into G.I. Joe, and I just followed along, and I love the toys because I'm a real detail guy. I love detail. I love little tiny points of articulation. And so before I even knew I was that, G.I. Joe was cultivating that aspect of my personality, because you'd have big, blocky, safe toys that you couldn't break, even the dolls and stuff. And then you got a G.I. Joe, and it's like a model. It's just the amount of detail on one of the rifles is insane when you look at it.
Well, and you can pose them.
You can pose them too. Yeah, so I don't know how they were able to get that sort of detail back when they were designing these things in 81, 82, hitting the shelves first in 82. And then when they fixed the swivel arm, because I had some of the straight arm at first, and as a little kid, I didn't care. But as soon as the swivel arm came in, and then in 85, when the up and down head came in,
straight arm.
Yeah,
I don't have the swivel.
The articulation, don't drop it. It's very fragile. The articulation on those by today's standards is impressive. By that time is mind blowing, because the main competitor for that size of figure was Star Wars, which was head, arms, and legs. They didn't even twist at the hip. And then G.I. Joe coming in, like, the connection point, they figured out a way to make that a point of articulation. So where the hip comes apart, so you can put in the
O-ring.
The O-ring?
Yeah.
That didn't have to be a point of articulation, but they said, well, that's a waist twist.
Yeah, it was a great innovation.
And that's huge. It makes it so much easier to fit them in the vehicles, because there's some toy lines, it's really frustrating, like Silverhawks. Never had them growing up. When I finally got them, so excited, over the moon. I got the Mirage and I got the Silverhawks. They don't fit in the Mirage. Even the pilot doesn't really fit in the cockpit. You got to kind of smoosh them in there. Goes for a lot of the vintage Star Wars figures too. But G.I. Joe, I never had a problem fitting a Joe into a vehicle, because they're contortionists. Yeah. They'll do whatever they need to fit in there and drive that vehicle off.
Yeah. My start was the Star Wars.
So what year was that?
Lots of kids. Oh gosh, I didn't see A New Hope in the theaters. So I was born in 74.
Okay.
So, but I saw Empire in the theaters when I was a little kid and started to get the toys. But then, as you say, they weren't posable. I mean, there's great. There's Star Wars, but when the GI Joes came out, and then you could pose them, it was game on for me.
What did you think later on? It wasn't until quite a while later that they added more articulation to the Star Wars figures. That wasn't until like the late '90s, I think.
Yeah,
Early 2000s.
I was checked out by then, I think. I mean, I would get a few here or there. And in fact, I sold all my GI Joes. Worst mistake I ever made. I grew up and I was a big boy. I don't need my toys anymore.
I'm a grown butted man.
Yeah, no. So here's the story. So I was raised by a single mom for my formative years, and she worked several jobs as a single parents will do, and but it was one department store. I think the name of it was Buddy's Discount, and so she managed the toy department, and I love her. She's a saint. But she wanted to give me things. And so remember back then, GI Joes were what, $275 to $285 or something. So she would get a discount. And awesome. And they were like 40 cents or a quarter. She would get these figures for. And then plus it was the 80s. So the relationship with bosses worked a little different as well. Yeah. Where I think her boss was, know that she was a single mom and had an only child at home, and so I would get these toys. So I had 124 GI Joe figures.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I had them through just 82 through 86, 87 ish. And I loved those things. And I wasn't one of those monsters that blew them up with firecrackers. Like I cared for those my Joes. In fact, I had one buddy, Charles, who came over and we were playing Joes together, and he put one of the guns in his mouth and started chewing on it like he was chewing on a pencil or something. And I was like, listen, buddy, I will fight you right now. We do not chew on our Joe rifle.
Fight me.
Yeah. So I just kept him in great shape, kept everything perfectly together. And I had 124, and then I had some vehicles as well. But anyway, in 88, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the old school NES with the duck hunt, and I'm a big boy now. I don't need my Joes, and so I sold all my Joes, 124 of them, plus vehicles. I sold them for $125, which was exactly what I needed to buy the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Hindsight is 2020.
Oh my gosh, But anyway, where I was going with this is, when I got older. Sorry, this is a weird story, but it was, I was actually working for the FBI, right out of college. Are you
allowed to say this?
I am.
Oh no,
yeah.
It's the CIA. You can't.
That's right.
Right.
But I found this little shop that had, Fun School GI Joes. Remember, the Fun School from India?
Yeah.
And so they had a few Fun Schools. And so this was like 99, 2000. I picked up a few Joes from there, maybe a dozen or 15. And then here lately in the past few years, I've started picking up more Joes, and I can't fill in my collection completely because that was my collection. That's some kid got for $125. But I'll get a few things. And to your point about, the store with the used toy, with the toys that didn't sell and the new toys. My version of the toys that didn't sell is there's a comic shop here in Minneapolis that's comics and collectibles. And so they have a lot of old Joes. And so I will go to that shop and go through these bins that's just old weapons. And I'll spend like 3 hours and they're awesome. They're a quarter each or $5 for $1. And I'm just like, and I'll come out with like $25 worth of like, weapons and guns. And so I just found a couple of the masks for the Cobra Eels, the
hoses.
The hose. I got a couple hoses. And so I'm having fun, like getting old broken Joes where their O-rings are broken or the parts aren't there, and just kind of slowly, patiently, like recreating them and fixing them up. And so I don't have a ton. I don't have my 124 original Joes, but
well, it sounds like you had a great run. That's amazing. The thing I love, like when you bring up the eel hose, and younger people today don't understand it, but they will in about 20 years when they're talking about, do you remember the 7th generation iPod and that OS that came out? And their, next generation will be like, talking about their mobile devices, way before we had telekinesis or whatever they'll have in 50 years. But
AI.
It's really a lost language. So when I was a kid, I remember some adults would have like the train sets, and it just did not interest me in the least. And I remember seeing a few really elaborate train sets. Like, there was a guy who had his whole basement set up, just trained with the trees and miniatures. And like I recognized the amount of effort and passion that went into it, but it just didn't make me go, oh my God, that's mind blowing.
Right.
But amid train collectors, they all spoke that language of, you have that and you understand how that works, and they could appreciate each other's stuff. And that's what toy collectors have too. We have this lost language where, you can talk to another, like, for example, a Joe fan, and you can talk about heavy metal's Mike, and everyone's like, oh, heavy metal's Mike.
It's always lost. And
And I think that's so cool that there's, a generation before us and a generation after us that have no idea. They can't connect. But us, we grew up, or Keelhaul silver pistol. It's like, good luck.
Yeah.
So that's
better 3D print it, because you're not finding it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of the coolest aspects about toy collecting, being able to speak this lost language with other people and have a shorthand, and to know, those parts that were so easily lost. It's kind of funny. You never hear about the parts that were never lost. I can't think of what are some parts that, like, you couldn't lose it no matter how hard you tried. The first one that comes to mind, I'm looking right at it. Grunt's helmet, Doc's stretcher. You could not lose that thing no matter how hard you try. It's just this.
Well, because it was clipped to the bottom of the Dragonfly.
You could do that?
Yeah, it fit in there perfectly.
Oh
in
my
between
God.
the two skids.
I never knew that. Is it designed to do that, or does it just
I don't know.
I've never tried that before, and that's another cool thing about
you got to medevac them.
Yeah, 40 years later, you can still be learning stuff that you never knew before.
Yeah. I will say my favorite Joe medic, though, is Lifeline. Like, I love Doc, but Lifeline, I love that he was a pacifist and
conscientious objector.
Yeah, because I was such this like tender-hearted, sensitive kid, and I was like, that's great.
And it's amazing.
Good for him.
He comes with a pistol, which is so weird. So obviously,
except for his Rice Krispies mail away.
Oh, that didn't come with a gun.
No, he didn't even have the gun on his hip, because they didn't want that associated with cereal.
So that's an example of
cereal associated with weaponry.
Yeah, makes sense. So that was an example of the cartoon and the comic deviating. Larry Hama never watched the cartoon, and the cartoon people weren't all that interested in copying or homaging what Larry was doing. So I'm assuming Lifeline didn't have a problem with guns in the comic, because why would they include a gun? It was Larry Hama that designed all of the or wrote all the file cards, so he had some input with the design. But it was always weird to me that Lifeline came with a pistol, and so anytime I've ever displayed my Lifeline, he's holding the barrel, and it's almost like someone take this.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Yeah. Or then in the comic, there's issue 11 of the comic is where it just hit the gas and got great. But there's this great sequence with Doc. Doc is introduced in issue 11, I think. And so he's first introduced to fights Destro, which Destro isn't given a name yet. And then Doc like throws a rock at him or something, or to distract him, but he doesn't fire at him. He's like, it's against the Geneva Convention. And he, hits Destro against the head with like a rock or something. So even the comic dealt with this idea that the medics, they operated at a higher level of enlightenment than
Yeah, heal, not hurt. And there was a movie a couple years ago, Hacksaw Ridge, directed by Mel Gibson. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, you have to. I
Yeah,
recommend every Joe fan watch Hacksaw Ridge
yeah.
because
I'll write that
I
down.
I don't know how many people hate Lifeline. I mean, he's such a great character. I, I would go. I would make the bold statement that if you love Joe, you at least like Lifeline because
Hmm.
it's hard to hate that guy. Hacksaw Ridge is about Lifeline, and it made me understand his character so much more. In addition to all of the great episodes where his pacifism is featured, Hacksaw Ridge is all about Lifeline. It's about conscientious objectors, and when I talked to Buzz
Cool.
Dixon, yeah, he said, yeah, that character was influenced by those wartime conscientious objectors
Hmm.
who he was talk about enlightenment.
Yeah.
Just a really, really powerful, touching story. That movie, the those guys really did operate on a different plane.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And after watching that movie, I always look at Lifeline as he's the guy from Hacksaw Ridge. That
Yeah.
he would carry out dozens and dozens of soldiers, wear the flesh off his fingers, just grind himself down to the bone to save other people because he's just an angel.
Yeah.
He's a guardian angel. Just
Yeah.
amazing, amazing movie.
Yeah. I loved him. I love that. I love that figure. I loved his white med kit. You could pop open the med
Yeah,
kit
with
and
the hose. It's such a
yeah.
contrast to all the other figures because almost all of them came with weapons, um, guns, grenades, all these instruments of destruction, and it was a good reminder. Hey, someone's got to patch these guys up. Someone's
Yeah.
got to put it back together, which is kind of weird. Cobra didn't have a medic.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
had
that's true.
they had no use for one.
Yeah.
They just
What's
chuck
the
them.
what's the comic book issue? Sorry for getting nerdy about the comic.
No
Larry Hama
apologies necessary.
is
That's
my
what it's all
hero.
about.
I love him.
Who?
Larry Hama.
Oh
You ever
yeah,
heard that guy?
absolutely. The Godfather. Yeah.
Yeah.
I call him
So
I call him Mr. Humma.
yeah. So there's this great comic where, gosh, and I can't remember which Cobra pilot it is, but it's the one that was genetically enhanced for
Night Raven,
to
maybe?
yeah, I think so
Strato Viper.
to take more G force. Anyway,
Strato Viper, yeah.
long story short, he's just a jerk to his Cobra Viper ground crew, and then he
Yeah,
gets shot down and has to call in for help, and they don't come. And
I
in
remember
fact,
that.
they didn't double check his release thing. And I'm like, all right, you got to be kind to your ground crew.
Yeah, I remember that issue now because the other pilot, who was it that was it? I can't remember if it was Slipstream or Ace or whichever Joe pilot went up against him. I think it was like a juxtaposition story showing you the contrast between Joe and
Hmm.
Cobra, and the
Hmm.
Joes would do anything for a brother
For
Joe.
their team. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for those right next to him. Yeah, and to be clear, I loved guns too. I was a red-blooded 9, 10-year-old boy, so I love the figures with the big guns as well. So
Yeah, and the thing is, I grew up on like safe, fun violence. All those stories of the parent-teacher groups that shut down all of the violent war toys. These things, they shot lasers.
hmm
In the first few episodes of Joe, I guess they sounded like real guns, which is so weird to
hmm
go back and watch the mass device. But later on, they were lasers. They shot laser beams. No one ever got hit. And it's exactly like the A-Team, where things would
hmm
explode on the A-Team. A
yeah,
helicopter would smash into a mountain. It would crash and explode, and then they would cut to the villains coming out and brushing
yeah,
like the dust off.
yeah.
And it's absurd, but it's like,
Parachute always open. You always
yeah,
saw the parachute.
poof. And it's this
Yeah.
little message of, look, this is all in good fun. And there's a difference between good fun and bad fun. And I just feel like I and all the other toy fans from the 80s, even 70s, even before, it just felt like good fun where there weren't any like horrible, horrific consequences to this so-called violence. No one ever got killed. Whereas like now what some people call good fun, I just look at it and I go, that cannot be good for your psyche in the long run.
Yeah.
Headshots,
Mhm.
6 hours of playing online games, headshot. It can't be good for your psyche. I can't see, I can't see that as good fun,
Yeah.
especially with like just the detail they put in that type of violence. It blows my mind that the stuff I grew up on, He-Man, it's too violent. Brave Star, Transformers, it's too violent. You compare it to, Call of Duty and other games that
Yeah.
children
That
are
line
playing.
has fundamentally shifted on what is. And actually, I appreciate Lego in that regard as well, because Lego
Yeah.
toys, they're like no real world weaponry. It's
Lego,
little.
yeah, and the movies or any Lego incarnation, any
Hmm.
Lego game or Lego episode or movie, it harkens back to the good fun where you have villains and you have heroes and they fight each other. But, you know, no one is ever orphaned.
Hmm.
Parents aren't ever slaughtered and a kid has to grow up without parents and stuff like that. It's always in good fun. Um, but the day might come where Lego becomes this ultra violent.
Yeah, it's
You
so
just never know.
my kids are 8 and 10. I have two girls, and just a quick story on the difference. So I have tons of Marvel Legends, and all my favorite X-Men, right? And so I have these Marvel Legends, and they love to play with these Marvel Legends, and they don't know who the characters are, and they don't play right.
Yeah.
They're not using the right superpowers. But every single time they play, it's the kindest, most nurturing. Like they all come together and cooperate and help one another, and it's like, okay, we'll battle one another. Oh, it ends in a tie, and I'm like,
Aw,
oh,
that's so
how great it
sweet.
is to see these two girls and just the way they play is. I'm like, all right, hold on to that as long as you can,
Yeah.
because it won't be like that forever.
And I think that's innate. I think
Hmm.
that's so natural for children. And the violence, the anger, the swearing, the rages, that's taught. Like
Hmm. I
I
agree.
see, I've seen a few kids playing video games and they got the headset on and they're screaming and swearing. And I'll speak up sometimes and just say that's probably not good for them in the long run. I mean, there's a correlation. Things are connected. When you're in your car, when you're 25 years old trying to get to work, and the dude in front of you, the light just turned green and he's not accelerating within a fraction of a second, and the
Yeah.
horn starts going, those are probably people who play a lot of these violent games where people are screaming at them, so they scream back.
Yeah.
It's not people who go for nice long hikes in nature and just you
Yeah.
know cultivate their coping skills. Like
Yeah.
I don't think these violent games and even these violent shows, violent anime, I don't think that helps you coping skills. It's becoming a lost art, the
Yeah.
ability to cope with things. Whereas the stuff
Yeah.
that I grew up on, like it was all about coping. Every single hero or hero group was all about how do we cope? The Joes, right? Something horrible has happened or will happen. How do we cope? Well, we formulate a plan. We prepare, we see it through. Same with the Transformers, He-Man. It's all about what do we need to do to fix this situation. And it wasn't all about, well, other than the Hulk, raw. He had a
Yeah.
different set of coping skills.
Yeah. He was a completely different beast.
Yeah,
It's funny.
he was foreshadowing.
Right, right. I call that the honk a second, which is an impossibly small unit of time, shorter than even a nanosecond, which is the amount of time before the the bro behind you lays on the horn when the
Honk.
light turns green. That's a honk a second. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, people you just relax, just chill.
Have you
It's fine.
have you ever gotten out of the car in a safe manner? All right, just to be clear, I'm not advocating stopping your car on a highway, but in a safe manner. For example, you're trying to get out of a coffee shop parking lot, no danger to you or to anybody else, and you're trying to safely pull out, and it's nonstop traffic, so it ain't happening unless you get T-boned. So you're
Hmm.
waiting for your proper moment, and you get honked at from behind.
Mm-hmm.
in a situation kind of like that. So not an intersection or anything like that. But have you ever gotten out of the car and just gone over there to talk to the person, to ask them, can you please elaborate on what the issue is here?
I have not. I just try to.
I've done it a few times. So it was, again, I reiterate, it was completely safe. There was no danger of any accident or anything, but I've done it a few times.
So how did they respond to that?
Well, there's different responses. The minority will apologize.
Yeah.
And stay quiet. But the majority of people, so I've done it a couple of times. I don't have like dozens and dozens of examples to go by, but here's the pattern. Here's the common thing. They quiet right up when, well, I'm 6'2", so there's the size factor, right? I'm not, 5 feet tall. And I don't walk towards them really angry. In fact, in order to emphasize that I'm not going to be angry, because here's the thing. You ever heard the old expression, the thief believes everybody steals?
Mm-hmm.
The angry person believes everyone's angry.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm walking and I'm not angry in the situation, but I'm not going to tolerate it anymore, especially if someone else is driving and it's stressing them out and they're not coping well with, like, come on, man, leave me alone. And they're going to do something dangerous, because I have been in these situations where someone's about to go and it's like, don't stop, because they're not going to pay for the repairs, and they're not going to visit you in the hospital.
That's right.
So when I get out of the car, blank expression, hands behind my back, not like reaching for a weapon, but just kind of that military, whatever you call it, like that posturing, disciplined posturing. Slowly walk over there, lean over, and just explain, can you please not honk, because it's not safe. And if an accident does happen, I doubt you're going to pay for the damages. And I just what I told you, right? I doubt you're going to come to the hospital and visit anyone with injuries. So the pattern, the majority of people, they're shocked, because who gets out of their car? Right? People feel big and powerful when they're in their car. That's the whole point of road rage, right?
Or on social media.
Things, you know what? Yeah. Exactly. Your computer and the internet is basically a big car. And people are just sitting there going, hey, idiot. That's exactly what they're doing. Internet is road rage. They got a big machine and they feel tough. So it's just weird for them to have this person not in a car, but acting, I guess, maybe they think big and tough. I don't know. I'm not threatening. I'm not dressing them down. I'm just telling them enough. And I'm making it clear. That type of personality, once you tell them no, that's where the hissy fits come in, the road rage, all that stuff. Like, I think a lot of them suffer from narcissistic personality disorder. And if you have any experience with people with that disorder, you tell them no, and they have a very irrational response to being told no. So when they're honking, come on, buddy, and you come out and you go, no, they can't cope with it. But what is it? Short story long. They quiet down. They are a little concerned. They're probably thinking, like, is this guy going to kill me? Like, have I gotten in over my head here? And they just, like, usually they'll, like, try to explain, like, you could have went. Almost always they say, you could have went. And I go, no, I couldn't. It's a different vantage point from up there. Don't honk again. Appreciate it. Namaste. Right? And it's very important. I really stress, don't be passive aggressive. Don't say, hey, I really appreciate you trying to help, when you're not actually being honest. Like, passive aggression is the worst thing you can do to people who are like that. So I'm very deliberate, and I say, look, trying my best. Everyone's trying their best. No ill will. All right? Just relax, take it easy. Not going to take you honking at me anymore. Hope you have a great day. Honestly do. And I don't know how to be more clear, but some people just, they're screwed up and there's nothing you can do. But for my own conscience, so that I can walk away and go, I did nothing wrong there. I told someone who was behaving improperly that it's got to stop. And I hope it echoes. I go back to my car or get back in the passenger seat. And almost every single time, This person who sat there looking up, not so angry, not so tough anymore, guess what they do when we're back on the road? They drive up beside, they give the finger, and they honk. Because they're all so brave now that they're back in their car and they're driving, and we got a little bit of safe distance. That's almost every single time that happens. They get all big and tough and brave. They man up because they feel like they got put in their place, and they should be put in their place. They're weak people. They got no power. They got no intelligence, or very little intelligence, no respect. And that's why it's so easy to put them in their place. And that's why they're so desperate to step on that gas pedal and act so tough and feel like, yeah, I showed him. It's like, so that's what happens. That's my short story long of what happens when you get out of your car and you try to rationalize with the honk-a-second people. I like that
the
term.
honk-a-second people. No, so I got a short story to turn along here, because it just made me think about a lot of things. And one is just, for lack of a better way to put it, I just feel bad for us, for people. You know, it just seems like it seems like when you're out and about, doesn't it just seem like everybody has a low grade anger at any given time? And it's like, oh, what is up with our culture that everyone's carrying around this low grade anger, where it just feels like, you know, like, listen, man, if somebody cuts in front of you in the line of Target, like 30 seconds ain't going to make you or break you. But it just seems like everyone's carrying that. And so I feel kind of bad for us. So back to toys. So in Nerds on Earth, I kind of have this, I'm old, you know, so a lot
young
of
at heart.
a lot of our content is focused on nostalgia, obviously, you know, my favorite Joes from when I was a kid, sort of thing. But I kind of have this bittersweet relationship with nostalgia. So I don't know if you're familiar with the name. There's this theologian named Augustine, and Augustine would talk about hope as hope is a combination of anger and courage, which is funny when you think about what hope is. And I've just noticed a lot of people, again, in the context of nostalgia, like they have this anger, you know, things aren't like they used to be. But they also don't have the courage to kind of keep moving forward with life and to nurture the relationships that are needed to forward. And I know particularly in America, a lot of this anger for nostalgia is turned into resentment. And I don't want to go into politics because ours is a mess, but there's all this resentment of like things aren't like they used to be. And I'm angry and I'm feeling left out and I want things to change. And they look for scapegoats. And so my point is always have this kind of bittersweet relationship with nostalgia. The Greek word for nostalgia is like to return to one's pain, you know? So
really?
And so, but the Greeks were thinking about it in the same way. Like, but you also have to have this courage to kind of move forward and then to embrace your present day and your future. So I just feel like people have lost that hope, and it's turned into resentment, and I feel bad about it. You know, I just kind of feel bad for all of us. And so I always try to say, okay, but where's the hope, and where's the, and so for the guys in the car, it's like, oh man, where's the, for lack of a better term, like the grace, to extend the grace to one another, and just relax, and which is easier said than done. You know, I mean, life can be tough, and you have little kids and job and marriage and all those things. I can see how anger could develop into resentment, but gosh, we all need to work on turning that into hope.
Yeah, I like that you use the term grace. I like to use that one a lot too, because I think it's a lost art. And I've brought it up to quite a few young people. I'm talking like under the age of 16, and they don't know what it means. I mean, there's some older people who don't know what it means, and I always invite people to Google it. Google Dictionary is an amazing thing, because it's a great definition tool. Grace. Just kind of a self-sacrificing attitude And people
Yeah.
who have little patience for other people aren't givers. They're selfish. What's in it for me? And they aren't givers. And if you see one of those people and it's clear that they're like that, and if you break it, because it's impossible to debate with them, rationalize with them, but if you just break it down to something as simple as give grace,
Yeah.
they're like, huh, what?
Yeah.
I don't know if that is completely missing in them. Talking about narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy, psychopaths, medical professionals believe that that's just missing in them. They never had it, they never will, and they just can't understand it. Sometimes I talk with some unsavory people, and I try to remind them of grace. The greatest purpose in life is service to others.
Mm-hmm.
Help other people, not just look out for yourself. Because the people who are all about themselves, just they twist and they writhe and they're miserable. They're never happy, no matter what they get, no matter what they accomplish. They just always feel empty. Like, I'm empty. And I've heard people who I suspect to be narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect it, and I've heard them say, I just feel empty. I don't know why. Like, well, that's not a conversation you want to get into, right? If you feel as though you're not like that and might even be the polar opposite of that mindset, that's not a conversation you really want to have. There's no alignment. But there are people who have behaved, selfishly, and get that reminder. I tell them, do something for someone else, sacrifice, suck it up. And it's like, you can almost see the wheels churning. Like, am I forgetting something that is programmed deep within my spirit? Like, it's in your DNA, it's in your spirit, it's in your soul, and you've lost your way because of bad influence, because of like violent shows, violent people, angry, selfish people all around you, coworkers, whatever, people on TV. That's why, like when we were talking about it earlier, children are just the most beautiful creatures on earth, because they just have this innate love, trust, gentleness, and all of that nasty stuff is learned from following the wrong heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why,
or lack of good heroes,
exactly. And that's why the stuff that I grew up on is as important to me today as it was when I was growing up. And there was a period where it wasn't. Like, I rediscovered all of this stuff. It's not like I've been watching G.I. Joe and He-Man from age 9 to today.
Same.
No, I took like whatever it was, the 90s, the 2000s, a 25 year hiatus from being really immersed in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Always liked the toys and occasionally would watch this or read the comic. But when I started to really focus on it again, it's when I needed inspiration from those heroes who knew how to cope with everything. And I wasn't seeing it in the new product being put out. The stuff being put out today is product. It's not inspiration, it's product. And so going back and being able to compare He-Man to whatever is a new sort of equivalent these days, it's no comparison. He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe, even Star Wars. Star Wars is a great comparison because you can compare. It is relative. Original Star Wars with new Star Wars. And in my opinion, Luke Skywalker's motivation is love. Is Rey's motivation love? Because I think you could compare Luke to Rey, because they're the main characters of their trilogy, right? We're 2 movies in, we've got 1 more to go, and people are, some people say, well, wait till the 3rd movie, and I'm thinking, I think it's too late. If we don't know 2 movies into a trilogy already what the motivation is, because in the Star Wars original trilogy, right from the beginning, Luke was a good-hearted person, always motivated by love. Loves his friends, super loyal. The first movie is more of a fun teen thing, but the second movie, he's going to throw it all away to save his friends. And Yoda is telling him, no, you have to save the galaxy. You have to stay. And Luke is like, my brother, Han Solo, he didn't know it at the time, but my sister, Leia, he probably had kind of like a sibling love for Leia in addition to maybe something else. Um, but Chewie and everybody else, like the dude was totally motivated by love. And then the Return of the Jedi solidifies that, where he is going to sacrifice himself to save a father who has done nothing but try to kill him and did maim him. That is amazing. That's Optimus Prime level of enlightenment.
I love Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the new Star Wars trilogy, I don't see anybody except you could say Han Solo sacrificed himself for something kind of along. I don't know, but
Han Solo is also my favorite character in all of cinema. I love Han Solo.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So to put a bow on all this, I just want to commend you, because that's how I discovered your channel was. I mean, you're on YouTube and you're looking for something. I can't remember how the first one, but I'm like, okay, this is a channel. Because what I like to do is I'm putzing in the garage or whatever. Like, I don't have time to just sit down and watch 2 hours of YouTube or whatever. But if I'm putzing around at something, just to have it playing kind of adjacent, and my kids could come and go. I'm like that. I love it. Like the fact that my kids could come and go while your channel is playing, and I don't have any concerns. I'm like, they're just hearing positive stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm in with this guy. I like this dude.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's, years before, when I was doing a couple of other things on YouTube, I wasn't all that concerned with keeping it, G rated. But as I saw a shift towards one thing, I want to be the polar opposite of that.
Countercultural to that, yeah.
Yeah, so because I don't think it's good in the long run. I see some of these channels where people come on and they scream and they swear, and I'm not talking about angry video game nerd. I think he's hilarious. And, he's got
playing a character.
Yeah, he's got a pretty saucy mouth, but I don't believe he speaks like that in front of his kids. But that's the thing with YouTube, though, is that back in our day, it wasn't impossible, but it was very hard for kids to watch R-rated stuff. So you'd have to get an adult to rent the movie for you if you're going to watch it at home.
So I watched it on TBS. So remember TBS?
Yeah.
And then all those movies, all the parts, because a PG movie in the 80s would definitely be PG-13 today, is what I'm discovering, with an 8-year-old. And it's like, oh, this is PG. And then, 80s PG is not the same. But TBS would always cut those parts out. And I would watch them on TBS. And then later in life, I would watch the full movie. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I don't remember there being nudity and Fast Times at Ridgemont High, because the TBS version didn't have that. So,
or how about the Die Hard, the replacement, the profanity replacement lines for Die Hard? Yippee-ki-yay, Mother Hubbard.
Yeah. The TBS version always sanitized things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know why we're talking about all this deep stuff. You need to tell me about some of those toys that are behind you.
Oh, the 80s toy museum.
Yeah. I need to hear about some of the fun new stuff that you got.
Actually, I don't get that much new stuff anymore. Where my collection is at the moment, all vintage stuff is really skyrocketed in price. So if I didn't get it, I probably won't get it, except for like the odd thing here or there. But in terms of my vintage stuff, Joe, Centurion, Silverhawks, I got that stuff way before it got really expensive.
Which is interesting, because it's not rare. Like, people think G.I. Joes are rare. I'm like, they made $375 million.
Yeah.
And the only time that plastic is a good thing is like in G.I. Joe toys. Like the fact that plastic lasts 1,000 years, it's bad for the ocean, but it's great for G.I. Joes because they're all around. And so some of these prices, I'm like, if you're patient, you can find a better deal. But some of them are like you said, they're really going up.
That also goes back to that lost language. It's amazing to me that just absolutely amazing that I can talk to someone in Minnesota or Texas or Australia, and we have the exact same memories of the same, whatever it is, whatever toy it is. We know every inch of that toy. We know the accessories and how it worked and some of the problems it had and some of the cool parts about it. That's a worldwide, a global language. That, like, what other things are like that? Even movies are in different languages, so sometimes things are lost in translation. But it's just amazing that you can have that shorthand with someone from all the way across the world, a 30 or 40-year-old memory. And so we are a community. We all are like very connected, even though a lot of us might not realize that. That's why I'm always encouraging toy collectors, just, chat with people, chat with your fellow toy people, post messages on the Facebook groups, email each other. Some of the patrons on the Patreon tribe are sending each other gift boxes. And just like
fun.
they used to when they were kids, like when we were kids, like, hey,
you got to trade them flag points though.
Trading stuff. It just sounds amazing to me. That was such a beautiful part of childhood that's really been lost these days. People don't really do that these days. And you can't really say, hey, you want my iPad? Sure, take my MacBook. It doesn't work with the digital toys. So it's really cool that was that fun a thing back then, and it still is too. How about you? What's new in your collection? What are you looking for?
Yeah, well, Nerds on Earth is an interesting thing because it's like we have a nostalgia bent, and we're just a collection of buddies who get together, and we're just fortunate that we found a huge audience from that. But we cover essentially what you'd find in the game shop. So like role playing games like D&D and Pathfinder, Starfinder, and then comics, and then collectibles, and then a lot of board games. And so mostly what I literally have a package a day on my doorstep from a board game publisher or whatever. In fact, I got one today of like a new game coming out that they want us to cover.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool, except I pay about, $150 a month on shipping just to get these review copies around. And, it's just a hobby for us, but it's fun. But my point is there's just so much stuff out there for nerds. And then particularly board games are exploding. I mean, the number of board games that are made, so publishers are just dying to get their thing out in front. So most of the new stuff that I get is from publishers. But personally, what I've been getting is, it's just this is the only new thing I've gotten is the little, the little hose. And so my happy place is to go to a shop with a bin full of just either dollar comics or old G.I. Joes and just root through. So I haven't gotten anything big and new outside of small little plastic toys, plastic guns.
And do you play with your toys in the sense of not like pew pew bang bang, but do you take them outside and take some nature pictures?
Not really. What I like to do is I like to fix them.
That too, restoration.
And then another thing about Nerds on Earth is we're kind of high level. Like folks are like, oh, this is super basic. And I'm like, that's our point. Like we want to be basic and have a wide thing.
Less is more.
Yeah. And so I like to fix them. Like if it's a broken thumb, then the only thing that's on the Nerds on Earth YouTube channel is miniatures. So we cover a lot of D&D miniatures and unbox those miniatures. But my point is I have the painting tools for the miniatures and so I'll drill the hole in for the thumb, for the G.I. Joe thumb, and put a pin in and then re-sculpt a thumb out of, the milliput or green stuff and then repaint. And so that's what I like to do with my Joes is kind of fix them up. And again, it's basic. I'm not an expert. I don't, re-sculpt. Some of the fan creations are amazing. I just like to do like, okay, the crotch piece is broken. I'll, drill a hole and re-sculpt a new crotch or replace an O-ring. So that's how I like to have fun with my Joes nowadays. It's just kind of fixing them up.
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, fixing up the broken ones. And
it's nerd meditation.
There are some purists who would be aghast at like repainting Paint Worn Joe, and you gotta those folks got to get a new hobby. Like, you got to get a new hobby. This is not fine china. It's not so thousands of years old. It's if Flint's spray is worn off, the paint is worn off, you get that semi-gloss black and you do a stroke of black over and make it look great again. That's
right. Well, and yeah, when I say Nerds on Earth is basic, that's what I mean. Like, we have no place for purist. It's like, have fun with your board games or your comics or your Joes, however you want to. And we're not purists about anything. We're like, hey, just they're your Joes. Paint them if you want to.
Yeah, there's that expression, all or nothing, that I see a lot in the toy community, and people who have all or nothing mentality usually end up with nothing. I say if you got an all or nothing mentality, change it to all or some or nothing.
Yeah.
Because you'll find out that having some is actually not that bad. It's quite nice having something in the middle over and over and over again.
Contentment is a virtue. It's like, I'm content. I don't need anything to change right now. Like, I'm happy where I am.
Yeah. And just we need to focus on the characters. You know, the toys are cool, but we need to remember why they're cool and focus on the characters that the toys represent, because it's a representation of a mindset of like a strong, courageous, graceful, self-sacrificing character. And I got some villain characters too, which they have no redeeming qualities, but like when I look at Too Bad or Clawful, I think, yeah, those are the guys that He-Man pounded on.
That's right.
So it's still it still builds He-Man up to some extent.
Well, the only thing I'm a purist on is that Scarlet is the best Joe.
Yeah. I recently did a video on her, and
I love her.
Reading that file card, I was blown away. Like, is there anything that she can't do?
That's right.
So yeah, I always knew she was almost on the level of Snake Eyes in terms of kind of being a ninja and stealthy and stuff like that, but she did all the military stuff too. Like, she's the blend of the kind of exactly like Snake Eyes, the blend of the ninja and the military. So that's cool to 40 years later find out even more information about this character that I've known about my whole life.
Yeah. And then I got her when I was a little kid, so she was my first nerd crush.
Oh, that's awesome. Because what we've always heard is that the girl figures didn't sell, and that's why they never made that many, and they stopped making.
Oh, is that right?
For a few years. I don't remember that being the case though. Like, I go to a Toys R Us now or a Walmart here. Toys R Us is still open in Canada, and I see countless Jyn Erso and Ray figures hanging on the shelves. Can't get rid of them. I don't remember seeing like, oh man, all they have is Scarlet.
Yeah, I thought everybody loved Lady J and Scarlet and Jinx.
As far as I can remember, those sold just as well. Lady J sold just as well as Flint.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about, la-dee-da, I'm a Southern belle. That's not what
she had a javelin launcher, man. Yeah. That's awesome.
So the female Joes were never sold as being girly, cutesy. Like, they were military. G.I. Joe was Army, military, Marine. And that's what took precedent over gender, ethnicity, age. That's what I loved about G.I. Joe. Like, no, your priority is your military specialty. That's your identity. That's who you are. All the other stuff, your hair, your ethnicity, your skin color, your age, your gender, that doesn't matter. The most important thing, and this is what's really cool about G.I. Joe, the function, the military specialty, used to be even bigger than the code name. So on the first year or couple years of file card, if you flip a Joe on the back, you will see Commando, and then smaller letters, codename Snake Eyes, or Warrant Officer, codename Flint. So that's what I always appreciated about G.I. Joe. Your job is more important than all of these other things that you had no control over. You know, what's most important is what you worked for and what you earned.
Yeah, it's another gift from Larry Hama.
Yeah,
is that gender? None of that mattered. They were all competent.
Absolutely. Well, Clave, it's been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, really glad we got a chance to chat a little bit. And everyone out there, be sure to check out nerdsonearth.com.
Correct. Yeah.
For all your nerd community. And we were talking earlier about social media and the advantages of social media. It almost feels like it's better. Like I think actually meeting in person is great, but I find it very difficult to meet on a regular basis with like-minded toy collectors. And there's quite a few in my area. It's not like I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just scheduling is really difficult.
Getting two adults in the same room is crazy.
That's right. And it just never seems to work out. So social media, I see my friends, in the toy community on social media much more than I see my toy friends in person. So so I say, like, go for it, do it, jump in, deep dive, embrace it and appreciate it. So Nerds on Earth is a great site for talking to like-minded toy fans.
Yeah, and again, I just want to commend you on your channel. It's not only is it fun, you get the history of Transformers, but hey, it's everyone's welcome, which is great.
Yeah, and I've always, I am just such a fan of everything that I didn't want to just focus on one thing, right? We're just doing Transformers here, or we're just doing G.I. Joe. I think it's all awesome. I think I talk about synergy between toy and cartoon and comic and whatever else. There might have been socks, bed sheets. But in addition to there being synergy in a brand, there was synergy throughout all of those 80s toy lines, whether they wanted to or probably didn't want to have synergy with each other. They were competitors. They're like, we gotta beat these guys.
Yeah.
But it's all together amazing. And that's why people have such great memories of Toys R Us and toy stores like that in the 80s. Because you'd walk down the aisles and whether they wanted to or not, this stuff just all flowed together so beautifully. And that was the whole point of my room here, to just have a room of so-called corporate competitors. But it actually, all these years later, when all that business stuff is out of the way and you can just enjoy it the way you did as a child, you can just see how it all just goes together so well. The tone, the attitude, the fun factor of it is also similar, and it just strengthens everything else around it.
Or you can watch it on Stranger Things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to get through season 3. So.
And I owe a lot of my 80s nostalgia to Stranger Things season 1, because that really, it opened my eyes and it made me realize how much I missed that whole vibe and feeling of the 80s. Yeah.
Just the tone, it's not just the trappings on top, but it's the feel of that show. They nail it. They nail the 80s for sure.
No matter what goes wrong, no matter how bad it gets, it's still fun, good-natured. It's not cruel. It's not depressing. Yeah. It's just positive, optimistic. And it's nice to be able to watch a show like that and not worry about, is my favorite character going to get decapitated? In the cruelest, most, awful Joss Whedon type of way, just because he's he wants to troll the audience. So as far as the first 2 seasons of Stranger Things go, I was really glad to see that authentic 80s tone. I enjoyed the 3rd season. I just finished it. Kind of a shift. I'm noticing
I got 4 episodes to go, so
yeah. A little bit of a shift, but still very enjoyable. But they're growing up. Yeah, they're starting to grow up. So
which is life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Clave.
Well, great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. Everyone out there, thanks for listening, whether you're watching on the YouTube channel or on Nerds on Earth. Hope you all have a great day. And until next time, Nerdmas Day.
Later, nerds.